Labor Talks, recorded at Chippewa Valley Community Television in Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Hello, and welcome to Labor Talks. Today's special guests are Tim Dolan and Jay Collins, and they are English teachers in Wisconsin. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Jay,
Thanks.
how about you guys tell us a little bit about you?
Well, I can start. I'm going into my 5th year teaching at Menomonie Middle School. Moved up to Menomonie about 8 years ago from Illinois. My wife was finishing up grad school down there. I'm originally from the Twin Cities, so kind of lived around the Midwest. I recently got back from the NEARA about a week ago that took place in DC. And I've worked with Jay for the past 5 years. We're kind of co-teachers in 8th grade language arts.
Okay, Jay?
I'm teaching 17 or 18 years now. I taught for a while in Portland, Oregon. I lived there for about 10 years. And then moved to Wisconsin, and I've been teaching at Menomonie. I think this is my 11th year now. I taught 6th grade for a while, then moved up to 8th grade, and then I've been working with Tim last maybe 5 years now?
Mm-hmm.
5 years. So at Menomonie, it's set up in 8th grade, there are 2 teams, and so a student will be on one team or the other team. And so the idea is to, whatever team you're on, you're getting the same basic curriculum, same things going on. So Tim and I plan everything together. So we're, doesn't matter which side you're on, you're going to have the same ideas and same curriculum brought to you. So we have the same prep, but we're constantly bouncing ideas and throwing the ideas at each other and working hard that way.
Well, that's good that you guys can actually work those out together.
Right.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's
really,
fun.
really fun.
Now, and from what I understand now, you guys are, where teaching is concerned with the social justice issues in education. Can you tell us what some of those social issues are?
Sure. I feel like social justice is kind of at the heart of what we do throughout the year. Most of our units focus in on some sort of outsider in society. So we always kick the year off with the book The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. And year after year, students tell us that was by far their favorite book that they read that year. And it deals with kids that are from the poor side of the city versus the rich kids from the other side. And so you see some of that class struggle going on. And then we read a couple of other books that also deal with people that are disenfranchised, outsiders. So we try and tie that theme into everything that we do, whether we read a short story or read a novel. They all try and focus on the outsiders.
Mm. And that started at the read aloud of every no matter what, everybody recognizes with Johnny and Ponyboy.
Mm-hmm.
And we just saw that connection, and how do we keep that going? And it kind of has evolved, because we were doing that right away. We were doing that read aloud, and it's evolved to more read alouds that have that focus, and in everything we're doing, focusing on that. And it used to be, we really would say the outsider is kind of the theme, and it's moved to, we've kind of seen it really as social justice as the theme. So it's always evolving, but that's where kind of it started, and that's where it's going. So we do the outsiders. We always do a nonfiction article once a week, and that article always focuses on social justice issue of some sort. We try to make it a current event issue, like we were talking on the way here about, I guess it was a year ago, right after the Ferguson verdict against Michael Brown. We spent a lot of time talking about that and reading articles about the implications, the viewpoints on the verdict. So we're always trying to look at what's going on and then what's the issue, and then also have a read aloud. And it really got going a couple years ago when our read alouds were The Outsiders, The Chocolate War, and Fahrenheit 451, and both of our wives got mad at us. Where are the women? Where are the women in your books? And like, okay, yeah, you're right. How do we deal with this? And we thought, well, Malala, let's do I Am Malala. And as soon as we put I Am Malala into it, the kind of social justice kind of just exploded on us. It was like, because kids totally got her, like her, and it opens their world more, and that's really what really got the snowball gigantic.
Well, I think it's great seeing the kids get involved with the social issues too, like all the kids that walked out of school in Madison when we were down there for the rallies, because if they lose their teachers, I mean, it's obviously something they need to have a vested interest in. So then they come out of school, they know how about looking up issues and how things matter to them. I mean, I had a niece that still hadn't voted yet, and she was 23. And I said, you need to look at not so much what I think, or what your mom thinks, or what your grandma thinks. What are the issues that matter to you? Now find out where people stand and get involved. We can't continue to have apathy. We got to figure out ways to get them involved and keep them involved.
Right.
Yeah.
So they don't think it's not our place to do that.
Right. Yeah. And so one of the things we do a persuasive unit, we kind of hit there right when we're doing Malala, because Malala is about speaking and action, and so we spent some time focusing on that, and so we're having a lot of students getting involved with writing that way, and writing letters, a lot of letters to the senators, a lot of letters to the paper. They're published in Dunn County News.
That's
so
good too. Get them involved that way too.
And Malala kind of got that going too. His voice again. Here's a voice of their age doing something. Getting back to that action. Then how do we take this the next step?
Right. And when we do this kind of writing assignment, we always give them the opening to choose something that they're already passionate about. So we have some students writing about LGBT issues. We had some students writing about school start times to our school board members. So it's a wide range of issues, but it's something that they feel strongly about.
Like I said, that's excellent, because otherwise they're sitting back there saying, "I'm just one voice.
Right.
I don't matter."
Right.
And it's like, no, every voice matters.
Yeah, and it's fun. I was in class one day, and I don't know how it happened. In the middle of class, he just blurted out, but he'd gotten a letter back from which one of the senators, and he wanted to have coffee with them. He's like, "What am I doing?" And it was like, just like the whole class, like, "What? Are you serious? Like this really happened?" Yes. Go for it. I don't know if he did or not, but I said, you got to do it. And then show the Dunn County News, and hey, look, here's so-and-so's article. What? And then all of a sudden you said Morgan sent in, and we had a string for like a month there.
We did.
Constant
excellent
publications in the Dunn County News. Yeah.
Now, is there a lot of bullying going on in our schools yet?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I don't think it's something that's going to go away, unfortunately. I think it's more, teachers need to focus on, and administrators, on how we deal with that bullying, how we educate kids about bullying and stuff like that. And actually, with these different units that we do, we try and target some of those beliefs behind bullying. With the rise of Trump as the GOP frontrunner, this past year we saw all kinds of race-based hate speech and religious-based hate speech going on. So, that's kind of what led to Jay and I focusing in on I'm Malala, and because she deals with that too. We read a lot of articles about Muslim immigrants coming into the U.S., and we looked at two different responses to Muslim immigrants from Syria, from governors. So it kind of teaches the kids to see another side of that. Yeah. And
obviously, the internet does play a large part in bullying, correct?
It does.
Right.
Okay. And what can we do to overcome that? Or what do you see as steps? Not allowing them their cell phones in school? I mean,
no, that's not going to happen.
No, that's not going to happen.
It's interesting. Something I had to think a lot about myself, because my son's 10. And I think about, well, who's teaching my son about internet use? Well, as a parent, I've got to be doing it. And then I think a lot of stuff what we're doing as teachers is sometimes being the parent, and I think sometimes it's more and more, and it's dealing with these issues of how do you use the internet, how do you respect other people, and it goes back to that. First of all, how do you respect other people, and then how does that look? And so we spend a lot of time, especially in the spring, we do a science fiction unit, and we spend a lot of time on technology. What's its place, what's its use? We read aloud Fahrenheit 451, and you got these two characters, Clarice and Mildred, these two opposite viewpoints of technology, and having them really think about these two characters and their use of it and their place of it, and talking about it and just I'm finding having to be more and more blatant about talking about it that you wouldn't have to. Like 5 years ago, I'm going to have to talk, 10 years ago, I wouldn't have to talk about, you shouldn't take a picture of yourself naked and send it to your boyfriend.
Right.
Now we have to talk about that.
Right.
We have to present that to students because
That leads to a lot of cyberbullying.
it is something, and I don't think it's not being discussed.
Right.
And actually, I did discuss it, and my students they called me out. It was great. It says, well, what do we see? All we see is Kim Kardashian. So that's what they don't know any better.
Right.
So it's really has been a struggle for me is how much of it is now becoming this job as a teacher and teaching ethics and these things that.
But some of that comes back to respect, not only respecting
Yes, that's the
other
bottom
people,
line.
but they need to respect themselves.
Right.
Yes.
And if they're doing those kinds of things on the internet, they're not respecting themselves.
Right.
Right.
They're trying to live up to that ideal of what other people do.
Yeah. And how do you learn? And how do we teach them to question that?
Yeah.
Well, and the social issue, as far as being able to communicate too, when they're great doing things worth typing, but can they sit down with their grandmother and have a conversation, or their parents?
Right.
Because you look at a group function now, and kids under a certain age, they're all sitting over there on their phones, and they're not communicating.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so there's got to be a way for us to bring that back in, and so that would be a way.
Yeah.
with
And that's
the
what
teaching.
Clarice and Mildred. When we get to those two characters, that's what we spend a lot of time
Yes.
doing that. 'Cause Clarice is so much what we strive for as humans.
Right.
In nature, connection. Reality, touchy. So she touches his elbow. These little things that are so important to being human. So finding. I think we're always scavenging everything we can. What can we read? What can we have students read that puts these questions into play?
Right.
Yeah.
And we will read articles about technology, whether it's a news article or a blog or a short clip from YouTube, looking at other ways to look at technology. There's a great video that we watch called Look Up, and students respond to that. They get it, It's just they don't hear that talk or that other point of view, maybe at home or with their friends, so they need to get it from somewhere,
Biggest thing is just open the conversation and get them
Right.
talking.
Yes. And that's we're so blessed being teaching language arts, English.
We
It's all
can.
about conversation. It's all how do you read conversation, how do you communicate back in conversation, and writing and speaking. So we're kind of in a gold mine. It's nice. It's fun.
Yeah.
What ways would you suggest giving students the opportunity to see how positive change happens? Which ways are you putting that into play?
I think Malala does that for us for sure, because we're
Yeah.
seeing this wonderful voice doing powerful things. That's the first thing that comes to my mind.
I think what you're
Right.
talking about with your newspaper writing,
Or persuasive
seeing
writing.
a positive
Yeah.
change there too,
Yeah.
where they're or when they're, like you said, getting the answer back from the senator.
Yes.
That yes, my voice is being heard. And
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Are there other things we can do to encourage these kids to get involved?
That's what I think about.
That's something we keep wrestling with. We try and have units that force the students to create something or have something to show for their work instead of worksheets or memorizing facts or things like that. And so we're always thinking, okay, how can we make this a real world, have a real world connection where people from the community come in and look at what they've created or listen to them say something. So going forward, that's something we keep struggling with all of our projects. We like to do project-based learning, where they're working in small groups, creating some sort of thing that they can present,
And if that presentation can be out in the public more and more, that's what we're
Right.
trying to figure out. How do we get that in?
And another way, maybe get some of them involved. We got some very important fall elections coming up.
Yes.
Not just
Oh, yeah.
for the state, but for the nation, and to get them involved in some of the political campaigns, door to door, talking to people, or on the phone in the phone banks. They're always looking for volunteers,
Yes.
and I think that would be a way to get the kids involved in the election process to realize that their vote counts, that their voice counts.
Right.
Yeah, and that's something we'll do this fall. 'Cause that's we were already talking about how do we get the election into our classroom and use that.
Yep.
because it's not, not every year we have that.
Right.
So how do we use that, and and we have to struggle with how do we use that positively, keeping away from all of the negative
Stay impartial,
language.
right?
Right.
Well,
Right.
trying to stay impartial is very hard. Yes, but also keeping our students to not jump on the slander and the negative language.
Right.
And the hate.
And the hate, with just the blanket statements without having to think about. That's something.
It's a matter of teaching them the talking points, because you get a lot more response from the person you're talking to if you can keep that hate out of it.
Right.
If they can just bring the facts across and bring the talking points across.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we can figure out a way to do that.
And it's hard. It's hard to
is
do,
hard.
especially when it's not modeled. When it's not being modeled, how do you
do it?
Yeah.
And I know you guys are already doing some of this with the relevant issues, but are we teaching enough issues in our schools that are relevant, that are going to bring the kids in, about what's going on in our world today? Things like Black Lives Matter, Blue Lives Matter, the honeybee decline, for instance, global warming, the politics. I mean, what ways can we do this to bring this in, tie them in with the social justice issues?
Yeah.
Right. I think for Jay and I, it's every week we try and read a nonfiction article about something that's happening in the current events, and we try and tie that into our read aloud, whether it's The Outsiders, I Am Malala, Fahrenheit 451. We try and find an issue in there that is also happening today, that we can have students read about and then get a discussion going about it. And like Jay said before, we looked at Ferguson, the response to that. We looked at those football players that refused to play.
University of Missouri, right?
Yeah, Missouri.
Yeah.
So we read articles about that. We read articles about Taliban bombings in Pakistan, when we read Malala, because it was still happening when we were reading it.
Syrian
refugees. So we're continually trying to find articles that fit with what we're doing, but then also bring out this bigger discussion on what's happening in the world. And it's a nice forum for students to hear different points of view from their peers, and not just from us. They hear all different kinds of points of view in the classroom, and it's a safe way to hear that, with it.
Yeah, we're old.
Right.
They need to see,
Right.
Yeah, it's so much more powerful. It comes from the student sitting next to them.
Oh, yeah.
Something.
If we tell them to go jump off a cliff, they're not going to do it, but if their best friend tells them, they just might.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of kids today are involved in issues like the bees,
Right.
medical marijuana,
Right.
the global warming. I mean, it's just their planet.
Yeah.
But they need to start getting involved.
A big issue at our school at Menomonie is Lake Menomonie. That's become an issue that our science teachers do a really good job at. In the fall, we go to the creek by our school and we test the creek and start looking at the issues of
Water quality.
the water quality and
What's it's doing to the environment.
Yeah, what's happening to the environment,
Yes.
and it's relevant to the students because it's there. I mean, they all know
The high phosphorus levels, things like that.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's one of the other thing and as the school does. But yeah, how do we bring more social justice issues into the? And I think it's how do you rattle up teachers to feel comfortable to break away from these things you have to cover.
Right.
I think we're pretty fortunate with Common Core. It's pretty broad. These things you have to do, and how you do it is open. Where you're teaching science and social studies or math, I mean, I think they're more bound. And how do we release that to feel free to take a day? Let's just take a day off of school and at school, and let's just do this instead. Let's just work on this issue. Let's do these kind of things. It'd be more exciting.
If we go back to the internet issues, have you thought about doing a class on safe ways to be on the internet? The company that I work for has a program that we do for fingerprinting for little kids with grade schools. And when we send those home with the grade school kids, that goes home to the parents. The parents get that information. We tried doing a program through the middle schools with safe surfing, how to be on the internet safely.
Sure.
That didn't go home to the kids. The kids did not take those home.
No.
Yeah.
Because part of what's in there is all the codes. And there's so many people that tell me their child is not on the internet because they
Right.
don't have a computer at home or they don't allow it.
Right.
And I I've bet every single one of them. I can pull it up on my phone, I could go to any computer, and I bet you I will find your child. Because maybe they're not on the internet at home, but they're on it at their friend's house.
Sure.
They're on it at the library. They're on it on their smartphones. They're on it, when you get kids this big that have their own smartphones, those kids know more about how to use those phones than we do.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And there's got to be a way that we can try to bring that in and teach parents instead of denial, getting them involved as well.
Right. One of the things we've done, we do a writing unit on where students have to research a person that's taken a social justice type stance about something. And before we do that unit, we go through different websites, and how can you tell one website from another, whether it's factual or whether it's a corporate view of something, and so we talk about Wikipedia versus how does the website address end? Does it end in .org? Does it end in .edu? And you can tell some things from that. So I think that helps somewhat for them to navigate that. But with social media, yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
Well, and so many people tell me, especially if you're doing any kind of writing, never to go to Wikipedia because a lot of times their facts aren't right. So, are we teaching them other places they can go?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We are.
Yes.
And it's ridiculous. They can do anything they want. They're whizzes getting around the internet, but they cannot find information that's relevant to. So we have to kind of hold their hand and walk them through different places to go and how to get started. Because they can't do that.
Card catalog at the library would be a good place to start.
Yeah.
So many of them don't have library cards. They don't read books. They want they're reading them on their phones, or they're reading them in their iPads or whatever. But rather than having a book like this that they're going to take home and read.
Right.
And that's one thing Jay and I do is work with the public library. We have the public librarian come in and do book talks a couple times a year, and go through new books that they've ordered. And she signs kids up for library cards.
Excellent.
So
Get them involved. And it's nice to see libraries doing other classes for the kids to get them into the libraries, not just for reading, but they also do classes on internet surfing. They do classes on a lot of the different things like that to get them involved. I mean, at least that one does by where I live.
Right.
They're always trying to figure out new ways to get them involved and down there and use the library. Libraries get funding from local and county and state governments. We want to keep them going. We can't keep them going if there's nobody ever in there.
Right.
So we got to figure more ways to bring them in. Do you really feel that we're being successful in teaching our children high-level thinking skills? I mean, at least it sounds like you guys are doing some of it, but are we doing enough of it?
We always can do more.
Yeah, we can always do better.
And I feel like you can always be doing more. I think we're blessed and we're allowed to really go those places. I don't know how much time my colleagues are given that in other classes.
I'd love to go back to school now. I mean, your class sounds like a lot of fun compared to the English class I had in 8th grade.
But well, we've made it. We just have done that.
Right.
But yeah, I feel for my colleagues who have to teach math or science and the limit of time. I hear them talk about the amount of time they have to get these Common Core things completed. I'm afraid may limit the amount of high-level thinking that we can go with.
I mean, there are a lot of people out there that believe, for instance, with math, that they can use math theories to solve crimes. But I don't believe those types of high-level math thinking are allowed, really done that much of in the high schools level, or they want to teach them the math and make sure they know their math skills.
Right.
And I think they're going so much more away from cursive writing. Some of the things that used to be considered from the English classes.
Right.
Sure.
And we still need them, as an HR person, we still need them to know how to be able to communicate. They need to be able to write so that we can read it. They need to be, and to keep them involved in it when they're big on, no one else teaches that anymore.
Right.
Yeah, but we can teach them to write so it can be read. At the same time, we're talking about Malala, we're talking about Pony Boy, we're talking about Ferguson. So we have that freedom to be able to be doing that inside it.
Are we creating ways for our students' voice to be heard? Are we creating ways versus using the proven things? Are we creating new ways for their voices to be heard? Blogging and
I think so. I think just
think
with the technology out there, it has to happen to keep students engaged. So I think I see it happening. I know a lot of teachers who are doing blogs, having students do blogs themselves as ways to communicate. So I think it's happening there, and I don't think you have a choice really if you want to connect with the students.
Right. And I think, for us at our level with 8th graders, it's important that we tap into things that students are interested in, and then have them write about those things. If they're interested in it, they're going to want to write about it. They're going to want their voice to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's things that they don't care about, they're not going to want to share their voice,
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's why the social justice thing is so important, is because we do give them that opportunity to research things that they are already interested in and they're already passionate about. Whereas another class might not have that opportunity. So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, like I said, this is an important, to me, a very important issue, and that's our program for today. If we could have you guys back, we could talk about this more and more as you develop.
Yeah, we just got started.
Sounds great.
My thanks to the viewing audience and to Tim and Jay for making today's program possible. My thanks also to the folks behind the cameras here at CVC TV. And a final note, Labor Talks is on CVC TV, if I can speak my English today. It's also available on YouTube. You can do a search with your favorite search engine and keywords for Labor Talks and CVC TV and find us on YouTube as well. Thanks for joining in today.
Chippewa Valley Community Television is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, you can contact us by calling 715-839-5067 or on the web at www.cvctv.org.